Space Force does its best version of equity, and some crazy footage of a Russian surrendering to Ukrainian drone. Why that's fascinating. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you, fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Friday, June 16th, the year of our Lord 2023. So glad you can join us. This is the U.S. Space Force Lieutenant General Diana Burke, or a Lieutenant General in the Space Force, Diana Burt. This is another just reality component of lowering standards and doing things in a way that doesn't make the most sense, but it makes us feel good. Watch this. This is from the Space Force, a branch of the U.S. military. Check it out.
Since January of this year, more than 400 anti-LGBTQ plus laws have been introduced at the state level. That number is rising and demonstrates a trend that could be dangerous for service members, their families, and the readiness of the force as a whole. When I look at potential candidates, say for squadron command, I strive to match the right person to the right job. I consider their job performance and relevant experience first. However, I also look at their personal circumstances, and their family is also an important factor. If a good match for a job does not feel safe being themselves and performing at their highest potential at a given location, or if their family could be denied critical health care due to the laws in that state, I am compelled to consider a different candidate and perhaps less qualified.
So just to comment here, and I know this is tough commenting on military stuff, having not served in the military and really just an outsider looking in. But at the same time, there always will be barriers to readiness. A lot of people think we are not as well suited to take on China, which is really the purpose of having our military, inevitably. Some people think that we are not as equipped to take on China as we might think. And the other component to that is that the barriers put in place to make sure that we're ready exist, and they have to exist. Now, is that exactly what she's talking about? No. What she's talking about is, well, sometimes I look at people who are in critical situations and states that are doing, she said in the early part of that phrase that there are lots of anti-LGBTQ laws in various states. So the problem with that, and we're not going to go that far into it again, is this whole idea of separating the LGBs and the TQIA plus 1297Z4 people. If you take out the tail of the LGB group, there are effectively zero laws doing that, at least that I'm aware of. The only laws that are being put in place now is, hey, you can't do this as a trans person, whether it be transition your kids, compete in sports. And so to say that those are barriers for someone to do performance, it's saying something that is an 80% win in the country and probably even higher in the particular individual state, saying that that is a barrier to readiness because of somebody that you might hire but can't because their home life is difficult because they can't transition their kid. This is a roundabout way of saying, I wonder what the crossover is. I'd be willing to bet that this is just a political thing, which is a weird thing for military people to get involved with. But at the end of the day, I'm wondering how many people that are up for high-level jobs in the U.S. Space Force, a branch of the U.S. military, how many people that are up for positions of high-end jobs are affected by laws that say you can't transition your kids, and if you are trans, you can't compete in sports? My guess is not many. And so what I'm trying to say ultimately is that this is a weird thing for somebody to say in the position that they're in, and seems to be almost entirely political. Because like I said a number of times, if you look at the actual bills that are being passed in various states, there's a map at the on the New York Times, in the New York Times, it said, map of the US, these are all the states where these laws existed 10 years ago, and these are all the states where it exists now, and it was like a huge change. Like, yeah, Nobody needed a law that said a dude can't compete in women's sports. Nobody needed a law that said, yeah, you can't mutilate or ruin your kid's future because they feel something. You can try politically to loop in the LGBs to the TQIA plus community, but in the end, I don't think it's going to work. And that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to say, well, I have personnel that might be in a gay relationship that are affected by these laws. No, they're not. They just aren't. Just factually not true. If they are affected emotionally by a law that they don't like, I don't want that person in charge of anything, military or otherwise. At the end of the day, this is just a political statement that is ridiculous. I thought this video was fascinating. And this, I think, ultimately is like a culmination of when the rubber meets the road and you're actually in a militaristic situation, none of this gender trans, queer nonsense matters. Like, it doesn't. I want you to watch this video, and this is just the reality of the situation on the ground in Ukraine. We don't cover a bunch of Ukraine stuff because there's a ton of people doing that. And it's also so nuanced of like, should we be sending money there? Should we stop sending money there? And the people who say we should send money there are also pointing out, some of them make good points of, yeah, the Russian military, which is one of our biggest adversaries, is entirely depleted now, and if we need to pay to do that, that's fine. And then there's other people saying, well, that money that's being sent over there is siphoned, and there's other people saying, well, no, it's not money, it's weapons. It's just convoluted and crazy. The bottom line is, there is real world devastation going on in Ukraine, and keeping that sort of stuff in perspective makes you look at some of the stuff that we're fighting about here and go, why does any of this matter? Because in the end of the day, it doesn't. I want you to watch this video. This is from ABC News. This is a Russian soldier in the trenches surrendering to a Ukrainian drone, which is fascinating. But watch this in the context of us talking about, well, what if our genderqueer teenager wants to take puberty blockers? Will that affect their parents' military performance? I want you to watch this and think of how much that actually matters. Check it out.
Tonight, new details of the dramatic moment Russian soldier Ruslan Anitin surrenders on the battlefield to a Ukrainian drone. This video, given to ABC News by the Ukrainian Army's 92nd Brigade, begins with a different Russian soldier running through the trenches amidst fierce fighting near Bakhmut last month. The drone drops an explosive device just a few feet away, knocking him to the ground and eventually killing him. That's when Anitin emerged from a tunnel in the trenches. Realizing he's the last man standing, he uses hand signals to surrender to the drone, shaking his head and crossing his arms in an X. The Ukrainians attach a note to the drone in Russian saying, "Surrender, follow the drone." Anitin reads it and appears to ask for assurance he won't be killed. The drone moving side to signaling, no, he won't. He makes a treacherous walk half a mile across the open battlefield over the bodies of his fallen comrades.
Whew, that is some rough stuff. Regardless of what you think, regardless of our U.S. involvement over there, that is some real S. And if and when we are ever put in a situation where we have to be in a physical battle with a foreign enemy, a foreign adversary, none of this stuff we're talking about now is going to matter at all. So, I don't know. Maybe keep that into perspective a little bit. That's it. We will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. God bless America.